I'm Kristine Somerville, the Missouri Review Marketing Coordinator, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Miller Conversations on Literary Publishing, featuring the staff from Copper Canyon Press. We're delighted to have you here today. And Copper Canyon Press is one of the top nonprofit publishing houses in the country, so we really want to pick your brain about how it functions and about your expertise. And we're hoping, well, we know we'll learn a lot from that. So in lieu of introduction, I'll let you all introduce yourself. But we have Ryo Yamaguchi, who is the press's publisher. We have Janeen Armstrong, Reader Services and Intern Program Manager, and Claretta Holsey, Managing Editor. Our conversation is going to focus on the nuts and the bolts of the business. But I thought, again, to let you introduce yourself, say a little bit about your background, how each of you came to work for Copper Canyon, and then just a little bit about your role and responsibility with the press. So Ryo, would you like to start?
Sure. Thanks, Chris, and thank you for that really lovely intro for the press. We've been really so excited to be participating in these conversations, and my thanks to Sarah Linda for all of your work coordinating all of this too. So yeah, but you got me. I'm Ryo. I'm the publisher here at Copper Canyon, based in Santa Fe, as we were just talking about here. Although Janeen could talk to you about the historic building really that we occupy there at Fort Worden on the beautiful Olympic Peninsula in rural Washington. A bit about me. I've been at Copper Canyon for a few years now. I've only been I'm coming up on about my first year as the publisher. I stepped in after we had some retirements. Our dear friends and old colleagues, Joseph Bednark and George Notek, they retired at the same time last year. Around this time, we were starting to go through some transition stuff last year about this time. And I was really lucky to step in and kind of fill their many shoes. They got a lot done, a lot of work done at the press here. And so I kind of have a multifaceted role doing marketing, doing our publicity. I handle a lot of our development fundraising work. My good colleague Casey is our main development manager there. I'm the primary liaison with our board of directors. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. So we have a very dedicated board of directors, about 18 people strong there. And so I am the kind of main contact with them in going through all kinds of strategic planning and organizational stuff, lots of finance things. If my face isn't in a poem, it's in a spreadsheet of numbers and such, and I just kind of alternate between the two most of the time, or on a Zoom screen, I suppose. But and things, and so yeah, and then any number of other things. I don't know. Our main joke teller, maybe. I don't know, something like that. No, I think everyone else is better at that than I am, but. Yeah,
Do you have a joke for us?
We'll get to one. It's very organic for me, you see, but yeah. I'll leave it at that, maybe, and pass the mic here to one of my other colleagues. Yeah.
Janeen?
Thanks for having us. Hi, everybody. So I have been at the press now for 10 years almost this summer. And so besides met Michael Weger, so I think you might have met last time, but besides our executive editor, I'm the most long-term employee now. So my background is really varied. I'm probably the most non-traditional person as far as pathways to publishing of anybody that you've talked to here. I have done a lot of different kinds of things over the course of my career, but my inroad into Copper Canyon Press was through the nonprofit part of it. I had some nonprofit fundraising experience with another. It's completely different, not even an arts organization, but another nonprofit organization. And so those skills were a big part of what got me hired here. And so I have that big, long title, but basically what that means is I do a lot of administrative support kinds of things. I'm part of the fundraising team. I process a lot of donations and I write a lot of thank you letters and do donor stewardship. So that's a big part of what I do. Right now, I'm also doing a little bit of the financial administrative things. I do all kinds of different little things. I do the shipping and receiving. We do some of that from our headquarters here in Port Townsend. We're sending books to donors. We send out review copies. Of course, that's always very important to get our books into the hands of reviewers. So I handle all that and I do our inventory, those kinds of things. And then the other big thing that I do, which is really my true heart, is I manage the internship program. And so I get the privilege of vetting and recruiting and hiring and mentoring our interns. And that we have a really robust, I think, I'm not biased at all, but we have a really robust and thorough and I think really valuable internship program. And we work really hard to make it a very valuable learning experience and entree into being a professional in the publishing world. So I think, yeah, that's a good start for me. Thank you.
Okay, Claretta next, but I do want to make sure that we circle back to learning more about the internship program, and then Ryo about managing, running a board, the structure of a board, and then Janeen, what you were saying about donor stewardship. Those are three things. If I don't remember, please remind me, that I really want you all to elaborate on, because they're important things to us as well, and conversations we have all the time. So, all right, Claretta.
Yes, hello, Chris. Hello, everyone. So I'm Claretta Holsey. I'm based in Decatur, Georgia. So doing a lot of this work by Zoom, by email, but still holding up my fellow colleagues' hands here in production. So my official title is production editor. So what that means is that I'm managing our book schedules. So I take our books from the editing process to the copy editor, onto the proofreader, onto the designer, onto the printer, and onto the warehouse, and sort of facilitate a correspondence between all the stakeholders along that process. So that's the bulk of my work. How did I get here? Well, I studied English, creative writing, and French in undergrad. Wanted to do more with creative writing, specifically poetry, and was able to be accepted from there into a poetry program at the University of Iowa. And I think at that point I was looking for possible pathways into publishing, and I had a friend mention, Copper Canyon actually has an internship now and it's remote. And I said, oh, really? And I applied. So Janeen was the one who interviewed me and eventually recommended me as an intern. And while I was doing my graduate studies, I studied poetry. And once that 2-year program was finished, I studied literary translation at the University of Iowa. I was at the same time working as a production intern at the press and getting an understanding of all the hands that play a role in getting the book to be what it is, that physical book object. And so I got to play a bit of a role there. After my 5-month internship, I was asked to stay on part-time for that summer. And then after the summer, asked to stay on part-time for the fall. And all along the way, my mentor, John Pierce, was giving me one-on-one guidance and support. And once he retired, he recommended me to take his position. So that's how I ended up here at Copper Canyon. I think I started full-time 2022. Yes, but I was an intern the previous year. And so I've been working with Copper Canyon in some capacity since 2021. And it's been such a pleasure. But that's all I'll say for now.
Well, what you described leads into my next question about these possible pathways into publishing, because I think that students watching this video and students in our internship are really interested in that narrative, and what you described, I think, is completely helpful. But can you all three say a little bit more? I mean, jobs like yours are very rare, but when they come up, there's obviously a lot of interest, and someone really has to be ready to go and to seize that opportunity. So maybe saying a little bit about these possible pathways, but also a skill set too, that if you had to go back, I mean, I know a lot of us end up here accidentally and we acquire the skills on the job, but if you had to go back and sort of front load yourself with those skills, what are some of the things you would do? I know
Well, Chris,
there's a lot to that, but
y- y- yeah. I mean, I can start us off here, Chris, and I would actually be very keen to hear from both Claretta and Janeen in particular. I mean, Janeen has not only run our intern program for so long, but also keeps up with them very well, coordinates our intern alumni and that kind of thing. I think Janeen will have a lot to say on different pathways that she's helped facilitate and things. But two things I could mention though to kind of kick us off. One is that jobs in publishing are pretty rare. In fact, I mean, and maybe if you, I mean, but it kind of depends on the kind of publishing you want to go into. And so one thing I would recommend for folks if you are looking for a career in publishing is to be kind of open-minded about the different possibilities that are there. Working for a literary publisher, independent, small press literary publisher is just one version of publishing to go into. And if you are a poet, or you love poetry, and you want to publish poetry, I mean, of course, you want to find your way toward a place like Copper Canyon or any number of our peer presses who have similar lists and publishing programs and things. But I'd also recommend looking at academic publishing too. And there are many different scholarly publishers, around big ones and small ones, doing regional lists, regional history, regional literature can be really great. And so looking close, near you is great. There are lots of large trade houses, the big ones that you could think of, like Penguin Random House, et cetera, Knopf. Norton and things like that in New York. If you want to go live in New York, working in publishing that's a great lifestyle, to have. Hard too. It's all hard work to do. And then there's also other kinds of forms of academic publishing that you might not think about. Going into academic journals, publishing, working for an organization like the American Library Association that's based in Chicago. So you could have a publishing life there based in Chicago. Things like that. Lots of different organizations and ways in all different kinds of realms of publishing. Publishing is a very large umbrella term, and it's not just publishing novels and collections of poems necessarily. Even if that's what you want to do, you can kind of get your foot in the door in one place and then do another one. And that's kind of what my pathway has been. And then another quick thing I would say, I'm also very interested to hear what Claretta and Janeen have to say about skill sets, because I think there are specific, but there's kind of a matrix of them that I think are really helpful. The biggest thing I would say is that it is like any work in the arts, it's a people business. And I hate to use that cliche, but it's very true. And I think having a lot of good social dynamics, working with artists, at the same time being very organized too. I mean, that's the thing with publishing is that you are running an organization. So that spreadsheet thing that I mentioned earlier, if you're good with spreadsheets, you're going to do great in publishing. Just to stay organized. Claretta can tell you all about having to stay on schedule, to get books done, and it really takes an organizational mind to do that, and someone who's also come from the arts. All right, I'll stop blathering on here and pass it to one of my colleagues. But yeah,
Janeen.
Right, I'll go next. I should give the caveat that Claretta's path of internship to employee is pretty rare. In fact, we say that right on our internship page. We've had a couple of that. We've had that happen before. It does happen, but it's not the common thing at all. And so I mean, I will love to talk more later about the internship program, but it's really, at least for us, for a small organization, we have so many interns and so few open positions. And so that's not a super typical direct line. So I think from my perspective, that, kind of adding on to what Ryo said, that it seems like a lot of people really want to be editors and be involved in the editing process, and because that's fun, that's glamorous, and get to work with poets, and it's vital, of course. But from the admin side of it, since that's so much of what I do, it's not as glamorous sometimes, though I do get to interact with poets. But there's something like that, thinking not only outside the kinds of publishing that you might want to do, but being willing, I think, to be able to do a lot of different kinds of work within the organization. There's tons of support people that are a part of it, and especially if you're in a nonprofit world. Thinking about, my relationship with interns that have left the press and have gone on, and I've, given recommendations to them and followed their careers. Quite a few of them have actually ended up in nonprofit arts administration because they've gotten some nonprofit skills. And so I think giving yourself a broad skill set that might be applicable to other places is good just in general as a career, as you're starting out in the world. And then just being open. I mean, especially I think since so many of the smaller publishing houses are going to be very small with small staffs, we're all doing so many different things all the time. And so kind of that willingness, I think, to be that flexible, having those kinds of skills that transfer to different things, just being willing to dive in and kind of do anything and everything. Even if it's not very glamorous, but just knowing that you'll have some things that are more fun and interesting and some things that aren't, but that you can apply, your organizational skills, as Ryo said, and other skills to that. For myself, since I wish I would have started earlier thinking about publishing as a possibility for myself. It was always kind of a pie in the sky thing that felt too far off and something I couldn't do. And I was very unfocused as a young person as far as what I really wanted to do. So I've had a lot of broad experience, which has been really interesting. But thinking about like some of the things that I might have been able to do at the press if I had focused a little more intently on, having more of a focus and a drive toward one thing, which I did not have. So that's what I'll say about my own kind of experience. Okay, Claretta, that's over to you now.
It's so funny because the best advice would be to generalize as much as possible. Look outside of editorial, look outside of the typical nonprofit poetry kind of space. And yet my path, as I try to communicate to the interns that I speak with, my path is not typical because I went into it with specialization, not just literature, but poetry. Not just an editorial intern or a publishing intern, but a production intern. It's so there are a number of ways to get into this field. And I think just figuring out what will be your foot in the door, whether it's, getting a broader internship, you can see all the bits and pieces that goes into it, or whether you're thinking about some kind of specialization. And there, as Janeen has said, there's more to this than editorial. So think about other kinds of skill sets, organization, problem solving, I think might be the biggest for me because I won't say things tend to go wrong, but things can go wrong. And sort of just figuring out workable solutions to inevitable issues that come up is going to be the biggest thing, no matter where you are, whether you're in admin, whether you're in publicity, whether you're in editorial, whether you're in production. That's going to take you a long way, as well as just a simple passion for books. That's what I'll say.
Well, thank you. I mean, what you were saying reminded me of my own journey. I started out at the Missouri Review in 1990, and I was like a stray cat. I just showed up and never left. And if you just keep hanging out, eventually they let you inside and let you start doing a few things. But yeah. Okay. So the next question, and again, I know that there's probably no standard answer for this, but describe an average day on the job. And of course, it like for Claretta, it depends on where you are in your production schedule, which can, dictate your day. But maybe, or maybe your best love day. What happens on a favorite day working for Copper Canyon?
A favorite day, let's say, books shipped from the printer on time. They go into the warehouse and are immediately received and processed for publication day. That's a good day. I send out manuscripts to copy editors, and the deadline that I propose works just fine for them. And once those queries come back in, I get them to the author, and the author responds even before the deadline that I give them. That's a pretty good day. So just working throughout the production process, we're working in 2 seasons at once. And so as long as things are done on time, I'm receiving materials on time, I'm able to send them out on time, and just keeping our books on schedule, that's a pretty good day.
Do you have a printer that you love, that you have a good rapport with?
Well, I work with a number of printers.
Oh,
This season, we're actually working with 4 different printers. It depends on the specifications of the book, and it depends on, for instance, does this book have color? So another printer might be better suited for a book where you're printing the whole interior in color. Is it a hardcover? I know a different printer that would work better for that. So, but with all these printers, I've established a good relationship with them, proposing a timeline for them to turn those finished book copies around. And a lot of the times they're able to turn those books around on schedule. And then if anything comes up, we're able to have a conversation about what the new timeline might look like, and what's the chain reaction in the schedule if things don't quite go according to plan. There are a few printers that we work with, yeah.
Janeen?
Well, one of the things that I do is I monitor our kind of generic email address, our poetry at coppercanyonpress.org. And so that's how I start my day. I do that at home. So I get to do some hybrid in the office and at home. And so that can be really fun and interesting. Sometimes you get all kinds of questions and notes from people. Some of them are really interesting. You never would have thought about it. You get nice thank you notes from people when they're telling you that a particular book or a particular poem was really meaningful to them. That's always really lovely. We get a whole bunch of people that say, I know you're not accepting manuscripts right now, but mine is really great and you should look at it anyway. So that can be frustrating, those kinds of things. But then, so I get to interact with people in various ways to start off my day, do a lot of triage, forwarding things to different people. Then if we're thinking about really great day, kind of on the other end of Claretta's great day is when the new books arrive at the press and you get to open up that cardboard box and take a look at the physical object that we've all been working on for several months and actually see this beautiful thing in your hand. And then I get to send it out to people. And like I said, they often are very, very happy and they let us know about how happy they are to get that. So I'll come in the office and do some shipping. I do, let's see, what other kinds of things I might have on a really good day. I might be interviewing intern candidates for our next season. So those are usually done on Zoom. And so it's really fun always because I vetted. We usually have anywhere from 50 to 150 applicants for our internships. And so I've done a lot. We do several kind of steps of vetting, and the final step is the interview process. And so usually I have one other colleague and I do that. And so that's always really fun. I always have a great time talking to the different candidates. It's always really hard to choose because we get really wonderful candidates. So that might be a really fun day for me. What other kinds of, there's always a meeting. I don't know if I'd put that on my favorite day, but we have, we have our staff meeting where we all get together, which is fun because it's the time we get to see each other, of course, on Zoom. We have departmental meetings. I go to the development department meetings. So there's often meetings. Spend a lot of time, again, talking to donors, helping donors if they have any issues. Sometimes we just switched over to a new donation processing system. And so there's a couple little quirks with that sometimes. So helping a donor with our new system, make sure they understand how that works. So things like that. So that's kind of a little overview of my day. Thanks.
That's great. I love these answers. I'll keep mine a little brief in that Tuesdays are great days in general because these are the days we publish books, our pub day. And so congratulations to Marianne Baruch today of the pub day for her book, Figure Going Imaginary. And it's really wonderful to have a celebration of the title when it comes into being. Now again, I've had Marianne's book in my hands for several weeks now. And so it's not necessarily the unboxing of that book, for today, but it is a celebration of the book coming into being into the world. And I think that's really wonderful. So I love days like that. And if we're getting good publicity, I've had kind of a multifaceted good day today, seeing that there were some reviews coming through for some of our books, learning that one of our authors is making a very generous donation to the press, which is really wonderful. Having a good conversation with one of our board members, problem solving, as Claretta put it, on some kind of operational matters and those kinds of things. It's Mardi Gras. If you've been following the Bear Valley Bald Eagle nest cam, you'll know that the chicks hatched last night, and that was really exciting. Not really related to publishing, I suppose, but I think the pub days are really good days in publishing because it's a great celebration of everything that you've worked toward, for the life of that book. And I know we'll talk about the life of a book as it comes into publishing probably in some later questions.
So details of your internship are sort of bubbling up here. The Missouri Review, we have an internship that's attached to a course. And of course, some of the interns are going to ask you questions at the end of this, and they're listening now. But tell us a little bit, or tell us in more detail about your internships, the interviewing process, and maybe one editor we talk to always has a surprise question about, I don't know, what was one of the most challenging problems you've solved recently? And he told the story of a young woman who described her methodical way in which she killed cockroaches in her New York City apartment. And so I think that story won him over. But yeah, tell us about your internship, because it seems obviously it brought you Claretta, but it also seems like a very important part of your mission.
It is, thanks. So we've changed the structure a little bit. So the structure has kind of evolved over the years that I've been in charge of it. We used to have everyone come in person to Port Townsend and give up their lives, and they were completely volunteer. Now it's all remote, it's fully remote. It's been like that since 2020. Not surprisingly, we made that pivot. It's been really wonderful because it's expanded the opportunity. A lot more people can join us when they're doing it remotely, and they can still go to school, or a lot of times people have graduated. So we have both people that are still in school, recent graduates that might be in between undergrad and graduate. Sometimes it's young working professionals that have not really had a chance to work in publishing. They might be doing something else as their day job. And every once in a while, we'll have someone that's further along in their life. I love hiring non-traditional interns. I think that's part of the whole idea of trying to expand opportunity for people. And so sometimes we'll get someone who's maybe switching their career, and as an older professional that will come and intern with us, or we've had teachers sometimes that want to learn about publishing so they can go forth and teach. In fact, that Claretta's cohort had a teacher. So we offer, currently we're doing 2 sessions a year. We wanted to have longer sessions so that interns could be with us for longer. So we do the one we're in now, it started in January and we'll go through the end of June, and then we'll do one for the second half of the year. That goes July through December. We're hiring 4 usually per session. So it's 8 interns that we'll have over the course of the year. We've done anywhere up to 15 a year sometimes, but we're kind of trying to, we're letting it evolve. You know, we're trying to find the sweet spot right now with our current staffing level, so we may end up hiring some more. We do offer a small stipend now of $500 a month. To help with expenses. It's certainly not considered a wage. They're still volunteers. They're still donating their time, which we appreciate. So that's kind of general, I know. So we have different roles that we offer for the interns. We have a production intern. We've just started doing a communications intern. That's a new role that we've just started, that works with both the marketing department and the development department. And then we have a couple of just general publishing interns. It's always kind of been the goal of the program to offer a very broad experience as much as possible, again, because I tend to think that's really the most useful. And it helps us. We really rely on interns. Interns come in and become our colleagues for the time that they're with us. We give them real tasks and real work to do. They come to staff meetings. They're part of our staff meetings. They're just really, we try to, you know, based on people's skill sets and experience, of course, but really offer them real work to do. And they really help us a lot. And we depend upon them. And so, part of why we're deeply grateful always. And that's, you know, also part of why we love to be a part of their careers as they go forward, write them letters of recommendation and in job references and things like that. I don't know, I know it's all very general, so I'm so happy to get more specific questions, and I don't want to take up too much time with just my own thoughts here.
Well, one thing I am interested in that you mentioned was your staying in touch with your interns, and it sounds as if you have a formalized way in which you have an intern alumni base. So how do you go about doing that? How do you use your former interns? And maybe, do you see any patterns in terms of what they go on to do?
Yeah, so we actually have a Facebook group, and it because of things, the way that people use Facebook is changing, and so it has not honestly been that active, the Facebook group for alumni. There's a little bit happening, but I'm kind of leaning away from that a little bit, and have yet to come up with what I think of as the perfect way. So a lot of it is honestly emailing. I do a lot of email blasts out. I've got, you know, we've got everyone's contact information, and so tend to do some of that. But as far as involving them, you know, people will reach out to me, like I said before, for references or different things, but also we love to still give them free books over time. So that's one way people reach out. People will just reach out to let me know. I'm always like, tell me what you're doing. Please stay in touch. We do, when we go to the AWP conference, which I'm sure that you all are familiar with, we recruit former interns to come help us at our booth at the book fair. So that's another way for them to stay involved. What else? I mean, like I said, a lot of it is through email. I think just kind of personal connections that we make and keep with each other, and kind of just, you know, say, hey, what's going on, and let us know what's happening. So it's relatively informal. I know at the end of the internship that some of my colleagues are kind enough to have kind of a professional development session with the interns before they leave, kind of give them some tips and tricks. So that's more of part of the internship itself, but we are always kind of thinking of that, of launching them and seeing what's going to happen with them. As far as the kinds of things that people do, there's so many different things. I know a former intern is working she's at Grey Wolf right now. She worked at Feminist Press for a while afterwards, and now she's at Grey Wolf. I know somebody's working for Lambda Literary, which it's a literary organization. They're not a publisher, but they're, you know, deeply involved with literature. I know interns that, like I said, are working for different kinds of arts nonprofits. I can't remember the specifics, but are doing development work for different arts nonprofits. I know people that work in academic publishing. I know a couple that are in library school and like finishing up their library school. At least two of them are getting their master's in library science. I think that's interesting. Just so many different things, just a big variety. So, thanks.
With that, talking about your interns, I'd like to shift and talk about your board, because at the Missouri Review, we've had a board. We've largely used that group for events, and you know, they were all local, but I imagine Ryo, you said there are 18 members. I imagine they're all scattered across the country or the world, or so maybe you talk about how you formed that board, what are their roles and responsibilities, and how do you work together, and how do you make them feel invested in your projects?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, there's a lot to it for sure. And our board it's fairly robust and it's quite large. And actually, it is heavily concentrated in the Seattle metro area, which is just by virtue of the fact that Seattle is kind of our metro, location, our headquarters. Of the press being in Port Townsend, just across the sound there, and things. So we actually have quite a number of our board members are in Seattle. We have several also in the New York area, and then we've recruited more board in Bay Area, Portland area, and that sort of thing. So we're actually actively engaged right now, or the board is actively engaged in recruiting board members out more broadly across the country and in some strategic locations. Part of that is for exactly as you say, for event planning kinds of things. It's great to throw a party in New York, I'll tell you. And it's really helpful to have folks on the ground. And we just did a really lovely event with the poet Padraig Atuma that was a sort of a fundraising celebration at Joe's Pub in the East Village there in New York. So that was really lovely to have. The original board, like the beginning board of Copper Canyon, I think it was only 3 or 4 people. It was mostly poets there, and I think that's fairly typical for a small organization that's just getting going. If you'd like to track on a press who's just incorporated as a nonprofit, Black Ocean, really wonderful press, Black Ocean, kind of based in Massachusetts, they've just incorporated in the Chicago area and things. They'll be really interesting to watch as they form their board and get their organization kind of together, because they've been publishing books for a very long time, just as an independently run operation. And things. So there, it's a constantly changing scene out there, for the nonprofit presses. Things that are kind of important about the board. The event planning is important, and our board does a lot of like house party and fundraising kinds of elements and bringing together our major donors, and that is a very significant role. There are several committees, that would typically sit on a nonprofit board. One of them is the development committee, and those are folks who are largely responsible for those fundraising efforts. There's an executive committee that helps oversee some strategic planning and things like that for the organization. There's a finance committee for the numbers, as you'd guess, and then there's also a governance committee who's responsible for board recruitment and retention, and helping engage those board members around the mission of the press. Now, we're very lucky to have board members who've been part of the organization either as board members, as major donors, or just kind of part of the social networks around the press for some time, and they're deeply engaged in poetry. It's been meaningful for them to be stewards and guides for a literary arts organization such as Copper Canyons. Janeen Janeen's contributed a lot already just in the last few minutes, but she's very good with board relations. She knows our board members well. She interacts with them a lot from the development role, and could probably flesh out some of those dynamics a little bit. But I'll keep you off the spot for now, Janeen, but just to know that Janeen does a lot of work also with our board members and our major donors and things. One kind of last sort of preview thing, and I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions about board. The board relationship is always complicated because there's so many moving pieces to it. the one other thing I'll say is that I think it's really helpful to have when you think about the composition of a board is that you have people with various levels of expertise. So we have folks who run major bookstores. We have folks who've run literary organizations as a professional career. We have lawyers. We have businesses executives. Lots of folks who've sat on many other arts organization boards and can bring that experience to Copper Canyon for strategic planning. Having lawyers on the board is great because you get in-kind legal counseling and things like that. Helping up, we just revamped our our trademark, and so we had a board member attorney who helped us do all that trademarking things. All kinds of business stuff, looking at the numbers. Our finance committee folks are very, very talented, very accountant-oriented folks who are able to put together cash flow models and stuff like that for us. So it's really great to have a board with lots of different expertise and having successful business people. They know how to run a business. They can help us run the business side of what we're trying to do very strategically. So they're very, very important in terms of bringing all kinds of expertise, experience, knowledge that we don't have as a 6-person staff, at the press. So anyway, we'll hold it at that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure our associate editor, Kylan Rice, would love to talk to you, Ryo, about the board. I mean, we're puzzling that out and thinking about that right now. Also, thinking about donors, and I suppose at events you look around and or I do. I don't want to put this in an unkind way, but everyone is of a certain age. And I wonder how you all are attracting younger donors, if you're thinking about that, or you already have a lot of youthful donors. I mean, our donors seem to come from just seem to be the same make and model.
Go ahead, yeah, Janine, if you go ahead.
Sure,
Yeah.
I'll start. I think honestly that we could do better about recruiting younger donors. I'd like to see us do some different things. We have a social media presence, of course, which I think is, the way, of course, that we want to communicate with younger people. But yes, our demographic of donors and readers definitely skews higher or more elderly, or not more elderly. That sounds terrible. I think of myself as elderly these days, so I use that term a lot. But yeah, it's definitely at the upper end of the demographic scale. And so I think it's a challenge. I think it is a challenge because of course, a lot of young people don't, may or may not have money to donate. I think one thing that we do fairly well is, low barrier to entry, right? We are always very happy to take any size of donation that you want to offer. We also have a monthly donation program now, like a lot of people do. And so, I think sometimes being able to give $5 a month or $3 a month, even, it just seems more feasible for a lot of people, and especially young people, than trying to put out a big chunk of money. So I think it's not like we're terrible at it, but I do think, it'd be nice to see some different initiatives. I think in the past we may have done some like text where you can donate via text, but we are not really doing anything like that right now. So I think, in some ways, that's an area for growth, really. So that's the way I like to think about it. It's like, okay, we've got this great demographic that we could recruit better to bring them into the fold. What do you think, Ryo?
Yeah, no, Janine, I think that's great, and Janine does highlight that it's an area of development, that we're really trying to get, and in particular with, let's say, a major donor base. I mean, the thing is that there's just an organic quality to having a major donor that is just more often going to be someone who has financial capacity and time. Is going to be someone who's probably been in a career for a while too, and that's what's going to be an older demographic for sure. And I think that's great. And you know, that our community has flourished within those support networks and stuff. At the same time that we do support through, you know, lower barriers of entry, as it were, or lower forms of financial engagement in fundraising with the press through, you know, crowdfunding things. I mean, we've done lots of Kickstarters and things like that. I mean, we're not on Kickstarter anymore, but we do use similar models now to do that too. And I think the key to that also, if you're wanting to do more of a crowdfunding kind of model for it, is to provide really robust programming that meaningfully engages, you know, any reader where they are, to be closer to the press, to understand the press as an organization, as an entity, as a brand, as a house of poets and a family of poets. And I think we have historically done a really good job of putting together programming, readings, live stream readings, live readings, various kinds of, you know, reward tiers that give you something really special, to not only thank you for a gift that you would give to the press, but also bring you like close to the art making that's happening, and to show you that you, even if you're just donating $20, you are still very much part of this family of the press. And I think all the staff really very much believe in that. And want to make those operations even better, even more meaningful, you know. So both in terms of broadening the reach of our fundraising efforts, but also making those efforts, you know, important for people who are giving. And we've had different examples of successes like that. I mean, one thing I'll bring up, Patty Miller, Janeen. You know, we've had someone who's been donating to the press for 2 decades, I think, about $100 a year. You know, a very modest sum. And Patty has Patty passed away, and with great sympathy to Patty's family, and in her estate has left the press a very generous gift for that. And I think that's a wonderful story. That's someone who's been engaging with the press, who's found meaning in the poems that we publish throughout a lot of her life. We've seen it in her donation history there, and then it's culminated in just this incredible act of generosity that she's provided. That is so wonderful to me, those kinds of things. So.
Well, that story does remind me that you always have to be kind. I mean, we're known for our thoughtful rejections and treating everyone with a lot of sensitivity, because you don't know who's behind the submission, and you don't know who's behind a small gift and what their intention might be. So I think that is an important thing to think about. Presses, just like literary magazines, have to have a really entrepreneurial spirit to come up with different revenue streams. And I know, or I imagine, you all get grants, and you have foundational support, and you have book sales, and you have all these things. Is there anything really inventive that you're doing right now that you're excited, or any ideas you're kicking around to, again, generate revenue? Financially, it seems, you know, like it's getting to be a scarier and scarier time in terms of the costs of things and all of that. So you just have to keep finding money. So what are you all up to in that regard?
Maybe I can take the lead quickly on this for y'all, with y'all. It is hard, and it is kind of scary times out there, and we've gone with, like many literary organizations, and I don't know, I think we talked about this in the last session too, but the Lannan Foundation, you know, we were grantees for the Lannan Foundation for a long time, and Lannan Literary Selections. Lannan really enabled us to publish a lot of books, and Lannan sunsetted a couple of years ago, and so that was a wonderful partnership that we had for a long time that came to an end, and it was time for Lannan to do that and things, but it presented financial obstacles for us that we've been trying to fill, and things. A lot of that fulfillment will come from private donations, and so a lot of our efforts have been toward going to those major donors and broadening those networks and circles for fundraising. and things. And then there are other grant makers in the realm, in the realm too, that we've long either had relationships with or have been in talks with and things like that. The Hawthornden Foundation has been really significant for us lately over the past couple of years, and they're a really wonderful organization who I know are trying to solve a lot of problems out there for the literary world, both in terms of individual artists and for organizations. The NEA is, of course, going through a tumultuous time right now, like many federal agencies are, and that's actually top of many of our conversations right now, is to how to navigate new guidelines with the NEA and the new administration and things. And so that is, and we've long also been proud partners with the NEA for many years. The NEA also an agency that has helped realize so many books out of Copper Canyon's program. And the future's a little uncertain there with our ability to be able to apply for those grants going forward. And things. So a lot of that kind of remains there. We are lucky to have sales too. And I saw an original set of questions here, like kind of like a revenue stream breakdown. And I can tell you that historically we've been about 50% sales and about 50% fundraising. And that's been very helpful. It's roughly the same. It kind of goes up and down a little bit. The grants have shrunk in that because of things like Lannan sunsetting and stuff. So we're trying to figure out some of those revenue changes in the proportion of revenue coming in. But we're lucky that we have a really strong backlist. So we actually have very stable sales income for the most part, because we are proud publishers of many successful books that are very important to in renewable ways for new readers, coming through. I mean, and that's everything from Chinese translations that we've done to Pulitzer Prize winners in the last 5-10 years and things too. So in terms of being creative for revenue streams, I mean, the best thing we can do is just be the best publisher we can be, bring out the best books that we can do. The sales will be there. Then our donor community will be there. Our significance to literary organizations and foundations will be there. So as long as we can do our jobs the best that we can, as long as we can bring readers the poems, then I trust and believe that the financial support will be there to follow those activities. So how about that for a cheery generic answer? But it's true. But I think it's really true. So.
Well, it's fascinating to know. I mean, I had no idea that 50% of your budget came from book sales. And I think that's really uplifting and great.
It's real readers out there. It's real,
right.
It's people buying a collection of poems, and that's an incredible thing. So yeah.
Okay, well, let's then move toward publicity and marketing. So what does a successful publicity and marketing campaign look like for a Copper Canyon book?
That's great, Chris. And I'm sorry to hog the mic here, but this is my realm here too. But successful publicity. I've been really glad to do some panels and do some talks kind of on this subject, because it can be really nerve-wracking for an author. Like, how do I get the word out about my book? How do I do that? And I'll tell you right now that it is up to every author to do all of that work as much as they can also, because you will know how to do it best for yourself too, in certain ways. Now, that being said, we have been very lucky at the press, as many other presses do, to have a fairly robust publicity machine. I am doing that right now, and I would love to have a full-time publicist. I would love to have a publicity team that we could hire here to do it even better. But we can still do a lot of that work at the scale that we are now. And what that really means is it's getting advanced copies out, it's getting the galleys out, it's making announcements to the media. We have a very huge media list that I've just been pestering all last week with the news about our new releases and Marianne's book, for instance, and as I talked about, and things like that. So just getting that communication out there is really important. We are lucky to also have a lot of fans and allies in the media, people who know that we're a nonprofit, know we're an independent house, know that we're one of the rare publishers who focuses on poetry, and that brings us a lot of goodwill and fans. And so I am just endeared all the time to our critics who continuously cover our books at organizations, publications far and wide. So I think a really successful publicity campaign is just getting that, is just engendering literary discourse around a new title that you have coming out. Now, that could be a big New York Times review, or making like an O magazine list that's going to have a huge readership. We just had Padre Agatuma was on NPR, reading for both an anthology that he did with Norton and the collection of poems that we've published. Huge readership there, wonderful interview that really captures Padraig's spirit, his engagement with poems that are both his and poems out in the world. That's awesome publicity. That's really great publicity, and I'd love to see that. But there are other versions of it too. There could be a 3,500 word essay, 4,000 word essay, that's in a literary magazine that's deeply engaged in a single collection of works, or that's looking at the arc of a poet's oeuvre. That's fantastic publicity too, even if only 10 people read that piece. That's a great piece to have, because that's part of the literary discourse that we're trying to facilitate, for that author. Many other examples of it too, but just to say that there's all different spheres of public engagement with the works, whether it's academic, whether it's a big, broad, large audience kind of piece, and everything kind of in between.
Yeah. Do you, before you sort of launched this publicity marketing campaign, do you meet with the poet and ask about their expectations and how comfortable they are dealing with the media and things like that? Do you prep them? I mean, what does that look like? Or are they all just extroverts and ready to go?
Poets as extroverts, yes, indeed. So some are great. You met with Jericho. I think Jericho's
Right.
a great example of someone who's just wonderful public figure, can engage as a public figure around poetry in really terrific ways. I do meet. So I will have publicity and marketing meetings, and I'll go over the calendar. Too, and I know you have some questions here about kind of the schedule of press stuff, and I could talk about that if you'd like. But for now, let's just kind of mention that we meet. I will talk with them exactly as you're saying. What's your comfort? What are your hopes and expectations? What is your dream publicity? I ask all these questions, and we talk it through. I will often, most of the time too, I will provide our media list, and I'll ask the authors to annotate them. Give me notes on, because they know a lot of these people too. These are other poets who are out there who are organizing book reviews or writing or doing criticism and things, and so they can let me know what their relationships are like, who I should focus on, and then they can give me a whole other set of lists of folks that I'm missing, or particularly like particular targets that they might want to do. Maybe it's a regional set of folks. Here are all the really cool people in the Atlanta area, in Georgia. Like get books out to all of them. Here are all the classrooms I'd love to visit. If it's on Zoom or whatever. Write to all these folks and make sure that they have a galleys. And so we'll do a lot of that kind of direct work together. In terms of coaching for media and things like that, in previous iterations of my life, we've done that kind of thing. If you have let's say you have a sociologist, like a scholar who's a sociologist who's just written this like really important book about the changing American votership, or something like that, but they're really an academic, they're not used to engaging media and things like that. We would do coaching services for them to just learn how to present their research and present their materials and things. I think that's a bit more germane to kind of scholarly publishing and nonfiction types of things like that. For poets, every poet has their own way they do things, their own reading style, and that can be from just reading the poem, like this in the microphone, and do that. If that is you do that, and that's great. Or versus someone else who's bombastic and leading out there. And of course, I'm giving different polls of this. So for me, with poets, in terms of their public stuff that they're doing, I say you be you. You do it the best way you can do it. You do what you're comfortable with, and that will help you navigate your audience. Yeah. Okay.
So with Jericho, you're right. I mean, he packed the house here in Columbia, Missouri, and has a dynamite stage presence. Winning the Pulitzer Prize, it's a wonderful thing, but how did it change daily life at the office? Was it suddenly crazy, or, I mean, is there an upside and a downside, or is it all just up, I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
I think it's all up. Yeah, I don't think either one. Were you all here in 2020? No. Okay, so it honestly, in a lot of ways, between Jericho winning the Pulitzer, And then either right before or right after we had a National Book Award, that really helped us survive. I mean, helped us survive the COVID lockdown. Also, I think people were reading more books during that time anyway, so maybe it's not as directly related as I think, but I that time is all kind of mixed up in my mind. I think it's positive. I don't feel like there was any sort of like, oh gosh, we can't keep up or anything. It was just so exciting because we all believed so much in Jericho. And, we had published a previous collection of his, the New Testament, which had done well, but it wasn't, didn't get like when Tradition came out, it was just like so beloved. And so it's always such a wonderful thing to see a poet that we all adore so much and we've worked so hard to see them get the attention what we think of as they deserve, right? Because so many times we do the same thing where we adore a book, we adore a poet, and it might get good reviews and stuff, but it doesn't make a splash on the world. And so this book has made a splash on the world. And so to me, that's you kind of look at each other and say, this is why we do this. This is the reward that we all want for all of our poets, and we're so happy that this has happened. So I feel like it's just hugely positive. I don't know, Jericho, if you would say the same. I would think so. I hope so. But mostly it just, yeah, sure, you have to say like, okay, we're going to make sure that we need to produce more. And I can let Claretta might have some thoughts about what happens when a big prize happens as far as from the production standpoint. But I think it's like the best thing ever. It's just a thrill for all of us.
Well, I'd like to leave some questions unasked for our interns, but Claretta, I wanted to ask you about book production. How fancy do they let you get? Like, can you print a book that's embossed or French flaps or like the finest paper, or are you reined in and I don't know, stifled a little bit in that way?
Well, ultimately, we do have to think about these things in terms of our production budget. So hopefully by the time that we create our production budget, which is for a full fiscal year, we've had conversations with the poet, or we've seen the manuscript and see what trim size, maybe we have to account for a wider trim, a taller trim. Maybe the poet has expressed their wish that we do something special with the paper, the cover stock. And so hopefully once we do the initial production budgeting for that season, we will have taken all those things into account, and then we can just sort of shoot for the moon. But it's usually the case that these sorts of conversations happen after the budget has been established. And so then we have to think about do we need the foil stamp, or can we do an embossing? Do we need the special cover paper, or can we work with something that will still suit the book, but that will sort of keep us within our budget? In the case of something like Allison Rollins' Black Bell, Allison had come in the door with high hopes about what effect the physical book object would have on the reader. And she proposed fold outs within the book, something akin to Tahima Jess's Olio. And I looked into it, and we had to sort of make some other arrangements. First, we at that time had not contracted with a printer that could do that sort of thing well. And so having to find a printer that could even potentially handle these fold outs. She had also suggested full interior color, and we need to think about a printer that can manage that. Ultimately, we landed on perforated pages so that the reader could pull from the book and manipulate the physical page the way that Allison had hoped for. And so we were able to come to that kind of understanding, and that the author's own wish pushed us into a direction to find the kind of printer that can handle a lot of these more ambitious projects. And so I have one eye on the budget, but I'm also am fully invested in how can we make this work? Is there something that I can propose that will still fit the author's vision for the book? And then we have those conversations with them. What does it look like if we decide to go with that foil stamping on the cover? Do we need to talk about the cover price for the book? Does it become then more expensive for a reader to purchase something like that? And so we have those conversations with the editorial team, with the book designer, with the printer, and with the poet to see what all can we throw at this book in the first run? And what does this look like too when we need to reprint the book? Can we do all these bells and whistles on the second run? So these are just the sort of, well, we'd like to go for the moon always, but you know, I guess I'm the one who gets to throw the wet blanket on us and say, well, what about doing with this budget here?
Well, I envy you because we don't get a bell or a whistle. So we've got a straight standard. I mean, we have beautiful covers and all of that, but no bells or whistles. Okay, so I am going to leave it here. I could talk to the three of you all day long.
All right. Hi, I'm Emma. I'm a creative writing student here at Mizzou. I'm a senior. And I have a question that might be good for Janeen or Claretta about the aesthetics of book covers. Have you seen, any major change of the aesthetic of your book covers over the years? How do you keep it fresh? Do you keep up with trends? Is there a particular book cover that's your guys' favorite?
Start. I don't think we try to chase trends. I think the process of coming to that final book cover is rather organic in that the poet brings, they usually come in the door with an artwork that they love, or just with an idea, a sensation, or a mood board even. The effect that they want that cover to have on their reader. And we usually take that and run with it. Sometimes, so something that we've noticed is a lot of our poets might bring in a childhood photograph that they want to see featured on the front cover. So Ocean Vuong's is one example of that, but we've had Dianelli Antigua's Good Monster. She brought in several cute little photographs that could have made the cover, but this was the one that we landed on. So if there's one trend, I think that is one that we're seeing, not just in poetry, but in a lot of nonfiction work as well, as people try to delve into the kind of memoir, first person narratives across genres. But it's usually an organic process how we come to the book covers. What about you, Janeen? Ryo?
Happy to answer. I think Claretta, you really explained it well. I mean, do judge a book by its cover, as I always like to say. There are, I think Claretta really highlights really well that autobiographical, the childhood kind of photo quality, and there are numerous elements of that. We published several books recently where that kind of documentarian, personal documentarian quality is both on the cover and also in the interior of the book as well too. One thing I would add to things that Claretta's talking about is that it also depends on sort of like audience and the style of the book too. I mean, one thing that we're really lucky to have is that we publish a variety of books out of different poetic traditions. And so, we'll publish an author like I see Ted Kuzer's book there in Claretta's background, or Jim Harrison, and those will have a very classic, those will tend to have a more classic look to them because those poems are kind of classic, in feel and things. And so it'll suit that a little bit. Right below that is actually one of my favorite covers, is Black Swim there by Nicholas Goodley. I love that cover. I love that work of art. It's kind of strange a little bit. It has a slightly digital quality to it, but there's just something about that figure in that swirl of kind of digital blue there that I just absolutely adore. There are other versions of that we've done. Victoria Chang's The Trees Witness Everything is another really great example. I mean, it's a book that you would I think Victoria specifically said no trees on the cover for that book, and instead you get this kind of dot matrix printing. could reach down and grab it. My headphones are here, but it's a really wonderful kind of a slightly off-kilter approach to the book. It's also a very, very narrow trim. I don't know if Claretta, do you have it there? Yeah. Yeah, there you go. There's actually kind of a Japanese trim format too that you would see in some Japanese publishers. Is very tall kind of thing there, but you see it kind of has this digitally sort of typeface to it that I think it looks really great. That's one of my favorite covers too, just as a cover. The poems are incredible too. Anyway, just anecdotal stuff there.
Yeah, and you reminded me why I brought out the black swim cover too, because it was also one of my favorites. I think when I started at the press, is when we were thinking about cover artwork options for this book. And it came to be because the artist, Nneka King, was one that Nicholas Goodley was interested in. But we actually had her to create a new artwork specifically for this book. So we gave her a manuscript, an early manuscript, and she came up with 2 other options. And this is the one that we landed on. So talking about the organic process of covers, that's a good example. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Delaney. I'm a senior here at Mizzou and I'm studying English and economics. But I was just wondering, I know I've learned a lot being an intern here at the Missouri Review. I was wondering if there's anything that you guys might learn from your interns, or if there's any like key things you want them to take away from their experience at Copper Canyon into their future careers.
I learned stuff all the time from the interns, especially as I get older. The older I get, the more fun it is for me to be around the people that are college age or young, young career people. Just that everyone seems to be very in tune with contemporary poetry, like all the trends, everything that's happening, the most modern and fresh poetry. Students and younger people seem to very much be in the know about that. Kind of trends, things that are happening and going on, I learned from interns. Honestly, a lot of it is just the vibe of that interns bring. I just love having that excitement and fresh energy and just perspective on things. That interns have always been a big part of our IDEA work. When we were formulating our IDEA plan, our work plan, interns were a part of that. They've always helped keep us on our toes and keep us honest, make sure that we're really towing the line in certain ways. It's like, I think it's a beautiful exchange. I think it goes both ways. I want interns to feel confident. I think that it's not so much a particular skill set that I'm hoping that they learn, other than kind of the openness that I was talking about before, that kind of willingness to just be open. But I think I want them to have enough experience working with us that they just kind of know that they can tackle whatever, that they've been out in the world professionally, especially ones that are really young and students that come to us, so that they know they've worked in an office setting, they've done the meetings, they've just had a little bit of that experience to make them feel capable and able. And especially a lot of our interns tend to be women. The vast majority of them actually do tend to be young women, and so I'm always wanting to instill confidence into young women. Take up space, use your voice, be present, don't be afraid, don't apologize, all those kinds of things. That's a big part of my own personal philosophy in working with interns, is just really wanting to instill that sense of like, you're going out into the world and own all of your brilliance, because always our interns are so smart and capable and wonderful. They just don't have that experience, but I just want them to own all the goodness that they have and all the good just everything that they are. I want them to feel very confident and comfortable in that.
No, that's all I had. Thank you guys so much. It was lovely to hear from all of you today.
Oh goodness. Hello, everybody. I'm Anna Grace Fields, and I'm also studying English, and I'm also a senior here at the University of Missouri. And I've kind of, I guess, more of a silly question for you guys. You've been wonderful, like answering all the questions that we've been throwing at you. So what I want to know is, it seems obvious to me that you guys are very passionate about your jobs and about working at Copper Canyon. So what about Copper Canyon in particular is special to you? Like, what about working with the press is what you really, really love?
All right, fine, I'll
I,
start. I wasn't gonna.
it's unfortunate. Yeah, thanks.
The awkwardness staring at each other. Um, I think it's the people. We're such a small staff. We've actually gotten smaller more recently. Yeah, I mean, first of all, oh gosh, no, it's the people and the culture. There's that passion that you've seen us all bring. The way that we work together, we're all very collaborative. We really respect each other's opinions. We all work really well together. And and working with poets is great. Poets are wonderful people. I think almost always, not 100%, but most of the time they're really wonderful people. And so being able to interact with them and bring their vision, being able to bring their vision to life, I think for me is one of my other favorite things.
Now, I don't necessarily want to speak on behalf of my colleagues, but then again, I do want to speak on behalf of my colleagues and say that we're all misfits. I think everyone in publishing is a misfit of some kind. They have found their way into this weird little corner of the world, and they've thrived, they flourish. The blind melon video, the little bees costume people who like they find their people out there in the middle of the field, and I feel that like every day, and I feel that every day when I'm interacting with Claretta and with Janeen and with our other colleagues, and even though we're remote and those interactions are often taking place in digital spheres, I feel that collective misfitism, and it brings me like so much joy and warmth, I don't know, I feel like I'm me in this world, and when I've been in between publishing jobs or things like that, and I've toyed with the idea of going to work at an ad firm or something like that, and I'm just like, blah, I can't do it. Like I will miss my people, like among the poets and things, and the poets, of course, are misfits too, in all their really wonderful, wild, weird ways. These are people who've chosen to do the world's oldest thing. I think that's just strange and weird and wonderful. So, yeah.
And I'll say to the people, I feel at home at Copper Canyon, and it's not just because I work from home. It's because, and the relationships that we have among staff, with our interns who come in and they work so hard, and they're so bright and lovely people, and they bring all that energy to the press. And then our poets too, many of whom are great people and are lovely to work with. But yes, the people, and I think too, like the mission, that this work is so much a part of me. Like, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to study poetry. I wanted to study translation, and I get to participate in getting other people's work out into the world. It's so much aligned with who I am, and I'm just so grateful that I get to do that with these people. Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much. Those were some beautiful answers. I mean, I'm happy for you all that you feel like you get to work at a place that really, like, one, I guess, carries out a mission, and also with so many wonderful people around you. But yeah, thank you so much for answering my question.
Hi, I'm Sydney. I am also an English major and I'm studying creative writing. My question's a little bit simple, but like when you're publishing, how many copies of the book do you initially order for the first printing? And then how often do you have like second and third printings?
You should go for it, Claretta. Do you want to talk about it? Shall we take an example right now? Claretta or something? Yeah,
We're thinking about one book in particular, I
yeah,
know.
that's right. Yeah.
But we budget for about 3,000 copies for the first run, knowing though that once we get further down the line, we look at the sales figures for that poet's previous collection, assuming that they have a previous collection. Then we sort of recalibrate what that final number might be that we end up printing. But we begin with about 3,000 copies in mind. And our ideal is that we have enough printed to meet any back orders that might come before publication day and to satisfy any subsequent orders that might come in the next year and a half after publication. It doesn't always happen like that. So we've had a big success with Kitchen Hymns, Patrick Otuma's most recent collection, and we ordered fewer than 3,000 copies for the first run. And even before pub day, we had about that many back orders, about 2,500 back orders. So we had to rush and do second printing, and the NPR interview came out and all sorts of things. Padraig is all over the country promoting the book, and so there's been lots of great response from readers. And so we're in the middle of printing a third run that should ship tomorrow from the so, but the hope is that we print enough in the first run so that we can allow those copies to sell out, make sure that people are able to get their books in hand for about a year or so after publication date without our having to reprint.
Right.
Ryo?
That's true. No, thank you, Claretta. Yeah. Sometimes you make a grave error, and print not enough, and that brings that's the kind of heart-stopping thing when you get a message from a bookseller who's about to do an event with an author and there are no books. It's a terrible situation. You try to avoid that as much as possible. At the same time that you try to be prudent about having your inventory. Inventory management is just an endless hamster wheel of stuff that you're dealing with, because if you have books that are, no one wants a whole pallet of books sitting in the warehouse not doing anything. And it becomes expensive and et cetera. So you're always trying to kind of find the right amount. It's a very important and really kind of expert question that you just asked, about that, and things too. I'll give you a bit of advice too. If you're my old colleague Joseph Benark is an antiquarian bookseller, and so I'll tell you, if you're ever in a thrift store or something, just start looking for those presidential biographies and just start flipping through them, and one of them might be signed, and then one of them you might see in the front matter is the first printing, and there you go. Now you got a $200 book there that you just picked up at the thrift store and things. But it's kind of a neat world to look at printings and books, and all that information will be in the front matter of the book, and it can zero in exactly on when a book was made, and it's kind of an interesting world. So I find it interesting as a publisher in any case. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was really interesting.
I know, I've never read so many copyright pages ever in my life, but now that's one of the first things I do is read the copyright page. I'm like, oh, Janeen, you are geeking out.
The number of times I've talked to Joe, hey, how was your weekend, Joseph? And he's like, oh, I found this Bill Clinton biography, whatever. Yeah.
My name is Marissa. I'm a grad student and I have a degree in English, specifically creative writing fiction. And my question was, what do you guys look for? What's one special thing you guys look for while you're doing the interview processes for interns?
Oh, I would not say necessarily there's one thing. candidates that get to the interview level of the process tend to have some sort of experience doing some kind of editing, like for their school lit mag, or maybe in another internship. So they usually have some kind of editorial experience. I always love it when someone has some nonprofit experience, either as a volunteer or just maybe they've done some part-time work or something like that. That always gives me, that's a green flag, a plus. I think, the qualities, again, I have said this probably 3 times already. I really personally value people that I think are really open to doing anything and everything, really willing and excited. So that enthusiasm, which is such a generic sort of quality. I know I'm trying to think of something that might be more useful. I think really, passion for poetry, passion for publishing. A lot of times you can tell when someone's applying and you can tell they're casting a really wide net and they just want to do, they might be an English major, but they're just kind of like, okay, I want to do an internship at any publisher. But if somebody comes in and they're, really showing me that they've read some Copper Canyon books, they really love poetry, that they're really passionate about that. It's not so much a skill, but it does, I think, because of nonprofit publishing and because of the kinds of work that you do as an intern, it's not always super fun work in and of itself. It's a lot of hard work and there's a lot of long hours. So I think just having that true passion for what we're doing is important. But really, I think there's a certain amount of subjectivity, I always have, there's always usually 2 of us on an interview. And so it's always interesting to see, sometimes certain qualities might impress, another one of my colleagues differently than they impress me. So there's definitely a certain amount of, subjectivity, I think, is the easiest way to put it. You just kind of connect with somebody when you're talking to them, and you might not with someone else. We're definitely got my little rubric of all the things I'm looking for. So I keep, but at that level, everyone is very well qualified. So it's not so much that I'm looking for a skill, because I kind of know everybody's skilled. There's also, we're trying to make a balanced cohort. So sometimes that comes into play. We might have like several people that are all really interested in or really good or have a lot of experience in X thing, and only 1 or 2 people are like, oh, you know what, I'm kind of really into marketing or publicity, and no one else has really shown a big interest in that. So that might be an advantage during a particular interview process that might not in another. So I know it's hard to give much useful advice, because like I said, at this point we do like about 12 or 13 interviews out of, like I said, between 50 and sometimes almost 150 people. So at that point, I know everybody is really terrific, and it always breaks my heart to have to say no to the people that we say no to. So I don't know how helpful that is, but I'd love to hear Claretta's point of view as a former intern, if she has anything. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts, Claretta? Put me on the spot here.
If you gone through the various application processes and you're now meeting with Janeen or meeting with another colleague, maybe one thing to note is like technical experience. Maybe you learn very quickly, learn new programs or new systems very quickly, and you're able to articulate something that you've done recently that where you're able to enhance that skill. That might be useful. I know if I were in the room interviewing someone, my ears might perk up hearing that, just because when I started, I didn't know much about production one, but say I didn't know much about Adobe InDesign. But if I were to say I can pick up a new program and learn that skill fairly quickly, then it doesn't so much matter that I have not had that experience with that specific program, but I know I could pick it up. And so if that's a quality that you can enhance, a skill that you can work on, I think that will be very helpful. But it's a very subjective process. I would just say bring your full and best self to the interview and show your personality and help us to get to know you in that, 10-15 minute span. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Thank you. That was my only question.
Thank you.
I just remembered in my intern interview, I smiled a lot.
Mhm.
And Janeen, I remember Janeen smiling a lot.
I know. It's funny. I had people tell me before that they were really intimidated until they met me in person, and then they just knew.
See,
it
and
was
there
gonna
you
be
go.
okay.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Tiana Moeller. I'm also a senior at Mizzou studying English. I just got a notification on Chris's computer that her computer's gonna shut down in like 4 minutes, so I'll try to
Oh.
make it fast. So I guess my main question is when it comes to choosing like a bookstore or getting your books into bookstores, what does it look like getting that relationship, like curating a relationship with them and kind of choosing what bookstores you want to collaborate with?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'll try and address it quickly. That we are lucky to work with a really talented distribution company who does all the distribution for us. That's Consortium Book Distribution. If you're interested in independent publishing world, I highly recommend you look up Consortium. They distribute for many, 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 many independent small presses across the country. So they're very great. But we also try to facilitate relationships with independent bookstores in particular. A lot through Consortium. We send them galleys, we send them press materials, those kinds of things. We do a lot of events. Our authors do lots of events. In fact, one of our board members is one of the main buyers for Elliott Bay book company. They're in Seattle. So one of the best ways I think to interact with the bookstore is like, let's just do lots of events. Get them materials, early reading materials, show them that you care about what they're doing and their bottom line and the communities that they're reaching for themselves and also on your behalf too. And just understanding that they're doing that good work in situ in the communities and where they live, I think it's the best thing you can do to work with them, and also print enough books so that they have them for events and such too. Thank you. That's a great question. It's a great question. We love the bookstores that we work with. So
Just quickly, it may also be the case that an author would say, I don't see my books in my local bookstore. And then that's a more logistical thing where we could tell our distributor consortium, can we move books from our main warehouse into that regional warehouse? And so we rely on our poets sometimes to say, hey, wait a minute, there's this bookstore that I really love and I'm not seeing my books there. So what can we do about it? And then it becomes a question that we can pose to our distributor to help with that.
Well, thank you guys so much for answering that. I'm sorry we only got a short amount of time, but I've really appreciated listening to you guys, and the way you're answering questions is so beautiful. But yeah, it was nice meeting you all. Thank you.
thank you. It's great meeting you.
Hello. My name is Kylan Rice. I'm the associate editor of the Missouri Review, and as was heralded earlier, I have a board question. So, Ryo, if I could ask you a little bit more about that. We picked up a copy of Boards on Fire after you recommended it. So we've been passing around the office just like you all are doing. So my question is, Ryo, you mentioned that one of the functions of your board is to help with strategic planning, and you use that phrase a couple of times. Could you go into a little bit more detail on that and give us a sense of what that looks like for you, what kind of goals your board is helping you set, and how they're not just fundraising and helping with fundraising, but or these other in-kind kind of offerings, but also governing or leading or steering, because I imagine that's what you mean by strategic planning.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kylan. It's great to see you and be in and meet you on Zoom. And I am not an expert at neither board relations nor strategic planning. I mean, it's quite new to me, and I'm glad that you picked up Boards on Fire, because I did find that to be a really helpful overview of nonprofit board organizations and things. But when I talk about strategic planning, I mean, we have been in a number of sessions over the last several months. Oh no, did I lose him? Well, I'll keep talking here, Kylan. I'm sorry to lose you there on that, but
Chris's computer shut down, so if you want to continue to answer the question,
yeah,
right, and then
Computer shut down.
yeah, cool.
Yes.
Sorry, we knew it was coming. Yeah,
Clean this up and edit.
for sure.
So
Thank you.
Please continue, Ryo.
Thanks, Sarah Linda. Yeah, of course, yeah. We've been engaged in a number of sessions over the last 12 months. Part of our strategic planning is because we've had this kind of new leadership structure that had come in. We have a new sort of organization for the press, and so a lot of the strategic planning is like, how can we continue to meet the mission of the press, continue our vision with a new staff structure in place, and helping us make prioritize roles that need to be met and things like that. A bona fide strategic planning. Bona fide strategic planning will actually be fairly specific. It will have fairly specific looking documents that you'll use. That'll say, like, let's say we'll have a goal of, like, we want to increase our revenue 15%. That would be like one goal in the strategic plan, and then you'll have information in that sheet that will say, like, who are the key agents, what are the due dates, what are sub due dates of hitting different benchmarks of that goal, and you'd have all of that kind of detailed into a document for, like, let's say one goal of a strategic plan, and then that goal can fit into a larger framework for a larger strategic plan that could be organized any number of different ways. There are lots of frameworks for it that you can kind of look up online and things. We've used a framework that has came to us actually from some consultancies with Fiona McRae, the former publisher of Grey Wolf, who was helping us kind of identify, like, 4 key pillars for the press, or like certain, or any number of key pillars, like, things that are related to our mission. We're trying to put books out. We want to support the authors robustly. We want to have fiduciary fiscal responsibility. We're not gonna work at a deficit, for instance. And how do we meet each of those kind of pillars or large goals with a bunch of sub goals and things too. So it can be a fairly complex process, but the main idea is to get all of your activities, all the plates spinning sort of in the same direction, get every part of the organization working toward a common set of goals and achievements, and also operating according to commonly held sets of values. We have a value set at the press. Kind of sort of a moral compass that we live by, that both determines how we engage as an organization in the wider world, and also how we engage among each other as a staff and things too. And that can be part of the strategic planning as well. So it can be a very multifaceted, complex thing. And like I said, I'm not an expert at it, and we're still undergoing the new strategic planning processes that we're working on. So let me write back to you in 6 months when I can share with you the whole complete thing. But yeah. Thank you, Kylan. That's a great question.
Okay, I think that's it. Unless Janeen or Claretta have anything else to add, I'll turn it over to Spear to close us out.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you guys, Ryo, Claretta, Janeen. It's been wonderful. And I have a secret question to ask you. Have any of you ever been to Copper Canyon?
In Mexico, in the
Yes, in the Sierra Madre.
Yeah. I don't think we have, and I don't. Do you know, Janeen, about the origin of the name? If it's related, I don't think it. I think it's a Northwest thing, right? Like, or was it a Colorado thing? Yeah.
Samuel, I think he first went to school in Colorado, actually, and the way he got the seed money to start Copper Canyon was because at the school that he was at, he won a prize for having the best school lit mag in the country or in the region or something, and so that was in Colorado, and then they went to California briefly, and then they've been here in Port Townsend for almost the whole 50 years. That's my understanding of the lore, of the history lore. But no, I've never been. I would love to go, actually, to visit Copper Canyon.
There used to be a train that went across the Sierra Madre. And you would go through Copper Canyon, you would go through the Sierra Madre, and the Tarahumara Indians lived there. And they were, I went when I was 20 years old, I rode that train. And it was the first time I had seen a native person who lived there and who was of the land. And it made a lasting impression on me. I couldn't forget his face. I couldn't forget his look. And by the way, I want to also say that I knew your founders, and especially Tree, and she was a remarkable, adventurous, powerful person. And so you all have a fantastic background. Your name, your founders, and what you do, what you guys do is just amazing, and I very much admire it. And I just wanted to say that and to know that we are with you in this process. And thanks so much for talking to us about all this so straightforwardly.
Thanks.